Okay, so like imagine this, right? You're really active in your faith community
Hmm.
and you're thinking, okay, we need to step it up, like become a registered charity, make it official.
Right.
But then how do you even do that in Canada? What are the rules when it comes to religion and getting that charitable status?
Well, the thing is, it's not just about wanting to do good. In Canada, there's this whole legal framework.
Right.
It's kind of this mix of like Canadian law and the actual definition of religion itself
Oh, interesting.
that determines who actually gets that charitable stamp of approval.
So there's like a specific process you have to go through. It's not just like, oh, we're a religious group, automatic charity.
Exactly.
Okay, so to help us unpack all of this, we've got this really cool article from a Canadian law firm. They actually specialize in this kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
It's called How to Register a Charity Focused on Religion. So today we're going to really dive into this and figure out what advancing religion actually means legally from a legal standpoint.
I think that's really important because it's relevant for anyone, not just people starting a religious organization.
Mhm.
It's for anyone who's just curious about how the law works with all the different faiths we have in Canada.
Yeah, like how does the law actually interact with all these different religious practices?
It's fascinating.
Okay, so the article starts off by talking about common law in Canada.
Yeah, okay.
Now, for those of us who aren't lawyers, common law is basically like precedent, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like building blocks.
Okay.
Each court case kind of adds to our understanding of what counts as a charitable purpose. And that includes this whole idea of advancing religion.
Gotcha.
And what's really interesting is that the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, doesn't pick and choose between religions. They use common law as this kind of neutral yardstick,
Oh, okay.
not to judge which belief system is better,
Mm.
but to see if a group actually checks the legal boxes to be considered a charity.
So it's not like they're saying we like this religion but not that one. It's more, does your organization fit this legal mold?
Exactly.
Okay.
But here's where things get kind of tricky.
Okay.
A lot of this common law around religion, it developed when Christianity was the main faith in Canada. So the language they used back then, it might not perfectly match all the different religions we have today.
That's a really good point. It's like they were trying to fit a square peg in a round hole sometimes.
Yeah.
So how does Canadian law actually define religion when we're talking about charitable status? What are those legal boxes we got to check off?
Well, the article lists three main things that a belief system has to show to be called a religion legally under Canadian charity law. First, there has to be a belief in a supreme being.
Okay, like a higher power.
Right.
Most religions have that, right?
Yeah, pretty straightforward. Most do.
Okay, belief in a supreme being, check. What's next?
Second, you can't just acknowledge that supreme being. There has to be a doctrine, a teaching, something that requires people to actually worship or revere that being.
So there's got to be more than just like, yeah, there's something out there.
Exactly. Active devotion.
Okay. So we're talking about rituals, prayers, those kinds of things.
Exactly.
Practices that show that you're actively engaging with that higher power.
Yeah. And finally, it can't just be this vague idea of a higher power and some rituals. There's got to be a whole system of faith and worship, like practices, a whole comprehensive system.
Okay, it's got to be more than just a few beliefs. It has to be a well-defined system.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So the CRA can look at it and say, yes, this is a real coherent belief system.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not just about believing, it's about having a structured way to express that belief.
Right.
But even if a group meets those three criteria, how do they actually prove that they're advancing their religion? What does that look like practically?
Well, that's where the real work begins. So the CRA accepts your belief system as a religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then they start looking at your organization's purposes, like what you aim to do,
Okay.
and your activities, what you actually do.
Right, so it's not enough to just say, we're all about spreading our faith. They want to see how you're actually doing it.
Yes. And the article makes it clear that advancing religion means actively doing things that show, promote, sustain, or even increase belief in that religion.
Okay, so it's about taking action. But how do you even measure something like increasing belief?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And CRA, they look at this in two ways.
Okay.
First, your organization's purpose is what you're trying to achieve.
Okay.
And second, your activities, what you're actually doing on the ground.
All right, let's break that down. First, purposes. What needs to be clear in an organization's stated purposes?
You can't be vague. You have to name the specific religion you're promoting, explain your methods, and who will benefit from your activities. Think of it like a roadmap for the CRA.
So it's like, here's our religion, here's how we're spreading the word, and here's who benefits. No beating around the bush.
Exactly. No ambiguity. And the CRA actually has this really detailed document called Guidance CG019. It's like the Bible for getting this right.
Oh, wow, I'm gonna have to check that out. But what about the activities themselves? Does anything done in the name of religion automatically count?
That's where things get a little tricky.
Okay.
It's easy to think anything goes if your intentions are good. But the article makes this clear. Not everything you do, even if it's for your religion, will the CRA accept as advancing religion.
So what's the test? What makes an activity actually count?
There are two key things. First,
Yeah.
the activity has to be clearly linked to your religion's teachings.
Okay.
It can't just be something kind of good. There has to be a direct connection to your core beliefs.
So you couldn't just open like a gym and call it advancing religion, even if you gave all the profits to your church.
Exactly. That connection needs to be obvious.
Got it.
And second, the activity has to aim to either show, promote, sustain, or increase belief in that religion. It needs to have a real impact.
So holding a weekly worship service? That probably counts.
Probably.
But maybe not a church bowling night, even if it's fun.
Yeah, it's all about that direct link between the activity and promoting your faith.
Right, right.
Now, it gets even more interesting when a religious activity also helps another charitable cause, like a soup kitchen at a church. That's fighting poverty. But is it also advancing religion? How does the CRA see that?
Yeah, where do you draw the line? That's a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And the article tackles this head on. They say when this happens, there are two extra conditions.
Okay.
First, the activity has to actually achieve that other charitable purpose, like feeding the hungry in your example.
So just saying you're helping, you actually got to do it.
Right, no symbolic gestures. And second, this is important, the activity has to be tied to your religion's teachings. And not just in your mind, it has to be clear to everyone.
So if your soup kitchen is obviously rooted in your church's teachings about helping those in need, then it's more likely to be seen as advancing religion.
Exactly. It's about showing that the activity is a real expression of your faith's values, not just like a good deed you're doing on the side.
This is so much more nuanced than I thought.
It is.
Religious organizations really have to think carefully about what they do and how they explain it to the CRA.
They do. It's this really fascinating place where law and faith meet, and it raises all these questions about how we define and regulate religious practice in a diverse society.
Absolutely. I feel like we could go on and on about this,
We could.
but our listeners are probably already buzzing with questions.
Probably.
Maybe before we get to those, we can look at some real-world examples just to, like, bring these concepts to life.
Yeah, I agree. Seeing how these principles actually play out will make it much clearer. So what kind of example do you have in mind?
Okay, how about this? A religious group focuses on translating their sacred texts. They want to make them available to a wider audience, maybe even in different languages. Would that count?
That's a great example. Let's think about it. First, it's directly related to the religion's core beliefs,
Yeah.
right? Sacred texts are fundamental, and sharing them is clearly promoting the faith.
Right, it's making it easier for people to learn about and engage with their teachings. But what about that second criteria, increasing belief? Is that measurable?
That's a tricky one. It's hard to measure, a direct increase in belief from having access to texts. But you could say that understanding leads to a stronger faith, like planting seeds.
Oh, I like that analogy, planting seeds. But practically, how would they prove this to the CRA?
They need to show how it connects to their mission. Maybe data on how widely the texts were distributed, or testimonials from people who found faith through these translated texts, or even evidence that the community is engaging more with their faith because of the translations.
So it's not just about the act itself, it's how you present it, how it fulfills your mission.
Exactly. You're painting a clear picture for the CRA, showing them that connection.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's a good example of something they'd probably approve. Now, what's something that they might not consider advancing religion? Something that might raise some eyebrows at the CRA?
Okay, imagine a religious group decides to open a super fancy gym with all kinds of fitness classes.
Okay.
Now, on the surface, that's positive, promoting health and well-being.
And they could argue that taking care of your body is part of their beliefs?
They could. But the key question is, does running a gym, even a really nice one, actually promote or increase belief in their religion? Is there a clear link?
I see your point. Unless they can show a strong connection between their fitness programs and their religious teachings, the CRA might be skeptical.
Right. The activity itself doesn't inherently advance the religion. It's a good example of how important that direct, clear link is. It's not just good intentions.
Right. It's like the CRA is saying, show me how this gym actually furthers your religious mission.
Exactly. And these examples, they're just the tip of the iceberg. There are all sorts of activities, and each one needs to be looked at individually.
Wow, I'm learning so much. It makes you see religious activities in a whole new light. But before we get too deep into this, maybe we should talk about something that's probably on a lot of listeners' minds. What happens when a religious group isn't just in one province? How does that affect things?
Ah, yes, the interprovincial puzzle.
Okay, here we go.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity, especially for bigger religious groups that are spread across Canada.
I bet. This is getting interesting.
It is. Buckle up. So let's say you're part of this, like, religious group, and you're doing well,
Hmm.
you're growing, maybe think you're branching out, going beyond your province.
Right.
You might think, okay, we're a registered charity here, so we're good everywhere in Canada, right?
Yeah, that's what I'd think. One country, one registration makes sense.
Well, not quite. Canada does have a federal system,
Yeah.
for registering charities.
Uh,
But here's the thing. Each province and territory, too, they have their own, like, legal quirks, their own rules about charities.
Oh, so even though the CRA is the big boss, there are these provincial and territorial differences that can mess things up.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it like different dialects of the same language.
Okay,
The basic ideas are the same, but the little differences can trip you up.
gotcha.
So depending on what your group does and the specific rules in each place, you might need to register separately in every province or territory where you operate.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a paperwork nightmare.
It can be.
Hmm.
That's why it's super important for these organizations to have a good lawyer, someone who knows charity law inside and out. Trying to do this yourself, it's like assembling furniture without the instructions.
You're going to have a bad time.
Exactly. You need that expert help right from the start.
Okay, good advice. But let's say a group does manage to register as a charity in a bunch of provinces.
Mm,
Are there special things they need to keep in mind about their activities and how they report those activities?
absolutely. Transparency and accountability, those are key here. When you're operating across those provincial lines, you got to be extra careful about keeping good records of what you're doing and your finances in each place.
So no, just lumping everything together at the end of the year.
No way. The CRA wants to see it all separate.
Okay.
Separate accounting, separate reporting for each province or territory. It's not just about tracking the money. It's also about making sure that what you raise in one province gets used for activities in that province.
Hmm.
Respecting those boundaries.
Makes sense. It's about avoiding any hint of like doing something shady, showing everyone you're playing by the rules everywhere.
Exactly. And remember, donors, they want to know their money is making a difference where they want it to make a difference.
Right.
This kind of transparency builds trust.
For sure. So what would you say is like the most important advice for a religious group that wants to expand beyond their own province? What's the first thing they should do?
Honestly, before they even think about expanding, they need to call that lawyer we talked about.
The charity law expert.
Yes. It's essential to really understand the rules and the possible problems of operating in different places. This isn't a DIY project.
Okay, lawyer up, check. What else?
Research, research, research. Just like you wouldn't travel to a new country without learning about their customs and laws, right?
Right.
You got to do your homework on the charity laws in every province where you want to operate. Understanding the little differences can save you from a lot of trouble later.
So being proactive, thinking ahead, having a plan.
Yes. And like any good plan, have a backup. A plan B, just in case things don't go perfectly.
Okay, plan B. Makes sense.
You got to be flexible, ready to adjust based on what each region throws at you.
All right, so be prepared, do your research, have a backup plan. Got it. Anything else?
Communication, big one. Don't just set up in a new province and hope for the best. You got to talk to your people in each area, make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, you don't want different branches doing their own thing and accidentally breaking some local rule.
Exactly. Keep it consistent, make sure everyone follows the same guidelines, upholds the organization's values everywhere. And don't forget transparency. Be open about what you're doing, your finances at each place. Don't shy away from questions. It's a chance to build trust, show you're doing things right.
So it sounds like having like a strong central leadership is really important here.
Yes,
People at the top who understand these interprovincial complexities.
absolutely. A board of directors, experienced, knowledgeable, that's essential for any charity,
Right.
but especially for those operating across provincial borders. They need to oversee everything, make sure everything's legal and ethical in each place, and be ready to handle those tricky interprovincial issues that come up.
Sounds like a lot to handle, but I guess being careful and planning ahead can prevent bigger problems down the road.
Definitely. It's like building a house.
Okay.
Strong foundation, follow the plans, and you end up with something solid and beautiful.
Love that. So let's switch gears a bit. I think a lot of listeners might be wondering about this. How does the CRA handle religious practices that are, well, a little unconventional? Things that maybe the general public wouldn't understand or might even find controversial?
That is a fantastic question. It gets to the heart of religious freedom in Canada. How does the CRA navigate all these different beliefs and practices? It's a tough balance for sure.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting. Uncharted territory.
Exactly. We're talking about those gray areas where religious freedom bumps up against legal rules.
Okay, so to start us off, can you give an example of a religious practice that might raise some eyebrows at the CRA, maybe even spark some public debate?
Okay, let's say there's a group whose beliefs involve these elaborate rituals using certain herbs and incense.
Okay,
Now, these things might be perfectly legal, harmless even,
right.
but using them in a religious context, that could raise questions, maybe lead to misunderstandings.
Yeah, I can see that. People might not get the spiritual meaning and jump to conclusions.
Exactly. And that's where the CRA's role is so important.
Nope.
They need to figure out, are these practices really part of the religion's beliefs?
Right.
Are they being done safely within the law? It's not about judging the practice itself, but making sure it's legal and doesn't hurt anyone.
So it's a balancing act. The CRA has to uphold the law, but also respect religious freedom and not be seen as interfering with people's beliefs.
Exactly. Every case is different and needs to be looked at carefully. Open communication is key here. Educating the CRA, educating the public about what the practice really means, that's often how to handle these sensitive situations.
So it's about building trust, helping people understand each other.
Absolutely. It takes sensitivity and patience from everyone. The CRA needs to be open-minded, willing to learn about different beliefs. And the religious group, they need to be ready to explain their practices in a way that people outside their faith can understand.
It's a good reminder that we live in a diverse society, lots of different beliefs and practices. We might not always agree, but we got to be respectful and open to learning.
Well said. And remember, the CRA's job isn't to stop religious practices. It's to make sure they're done legally and respect everyone's rights. It's about finding that balance.
That place where religious freedom and the law can both work.
Exactly. And while it's not always easy, it's how we create a society where different religious communities can thrive while still upholding our values of fairness and equality.
Speaking of upholding values, let's talk about financial transparency. Especially with religious groups, they often handle a lot of money and assets.
Yes, absolutely.
This is where the CRA plays a big role in protecting public trust.
Definitely. It's about the integrity of the whole charitable sector.
Okay, so let's get specific. What's the CRA looking for when they're checking the finances of religious organizations? What are the red flags?
Well, first and foremost, they want to make sure donations and other funds are being used for the right purposes, as laid out in the organization's documents. It's like a contract.
So if a church raises money for a new community center, the CRA wants to see that money going towards building that center, not something else.
Exactly. They'll be looking at all the records, bank statements, invoices, everything. They follow the money to make sure it's being used properly.
And I bet they're also watching out for any signs of, like, mismanagement, anything that looks like fraud.
For sure. Things like, leaders getting paid way too much.
Right, right.
Conflicts of interest, or any transactions that just seem off, not related to the group's activities. Think of it like a financial health check.
Okay.
They want to see if everything's running smoothly and ethically.
It's a thorough process, but it makes sense. Public trust and making sure donations are used responsibly, those are big deals.
It is a rigorous process, but it's there for a reason. The CRA has to protect the public, make sure charitable money is being used properly.
So what happens if the CRA does find something wrong, some financial mistake? What are the consequences?
Well, it depends. It could be something minor, like having to pay back misallocated funds,
Okay.
or it could be more serious, like fines, or even losing their charitable status completely.
Whoa, so the stakes are high.
They are. That's why it's so important for these organizations to focus on financial transparency from the very beginning. Build a culture of doing things right, ethically, being able to show that you're managing money responsibly.
So what can religious organizations do practically to make sure they're in the clear with the CRA financially?
One key thing is to have a good system of internal controls, policies and procedures to make sure all financial transactions are authorized, documented, and checked.
So checks and balances, multiple people overseeing things.
Exactly. It's also super important to have an independent auditor check your finances regularly.
Okay.
They give you an objective assessment, catch anything that might have been missed internally, like a regular checkup with your doctor.
Catching problems early.
Yes. Early detection, being proactive, that's key to avoiding those stressful run-ins with the CRA.
So transparency, accountability, regular checkups, that's the recipe for good financial management.
You got it. And I think this whole conversation highlights how we need to approach this topic carefully and respectfully. Religious freedom is a fundamental right in Canada,
It is,
but it comes with responsibilities too.
for sure. And that includes making sure your practices are legal and your money is managed ethically. It's about finding that balance between faith and accountability.
Well said. It's a conversation that needs to keep happening.
Right.
We need to be willing to learn from each other, and we all need to be committed to both religious freedom and public trust.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive. We've
Right.
talked about defining religion, what advancing religion actually means, the challenges of working across provinces, and even those tricky, unconventional practices.
We have,
Yeah.
and we've emphasized how important financial transparency is throughout all of this.
Absolutely. It's been fascinating looking at where faith and law meet in Canada.
It has. And there's still more to explore.
There is one more big thing we need to talk about: political advocacy. A lot of religious groups have strong feelings about social and political issues.
They do.
They might want to use their platform to advocate for their beliefs. But how does that work with the rules about being a charity?
Ah, yes, the political tightrope.
Here we go.
It's a tricky area for any charity, and it causes a lot of confusion, maybe even a little anxiety.
So can religious charities get involved in politics at all? Or is it totally off limits? Where do we even start with this?
It's not as simple as a yes or no.
Yeah.
The rules about political activity for charities in Canada, they're complex.
Okay.
They've been debated and interpreted legally for a long time, but let's see if we can make it clear for our listeners.
All right, break it down for us. What's the main principle here?
The key is this: charities, even religious ones, can engage in nonpartisan political activities that are directly related to their purpose as a charity.
Okay, nonpartisan. That's the important part. What does that mean in practice?
It means they can't be out there campaigning for a specific party or candidate. They can educate the public about issues that relate to their mission. They can advocate for policies that match their goals. It's about promoting ideas, not politicians.
So a religious charity focused on helping the poor could support policies that address homelessness, but they couldn't tell people who to vote for.
Exactly. Stick to the issues, not the players. And even within those allowed activities, there are limits on how much time and money a charity can spend on this political stuff. The CRA wants to make sure charities don't become mainly political organizations.
So it's not a free pass. There are rules to keep charities focused on their main mission.
Precisely. The focus has to be on fulfilling their charitable purpose, not on influencing elections.
I can imagine those lines can be blurry, especially when you're dealing with issues tied to religious beliefs.
They can be. It requires careful thought, understanding the CRA's guidelines, and good judgment. Religious organizations should always talk to a lawyer before getting involved in any political activity, just to be safe.
Good advice. Being a religious charity and navigating politics, that's not easy.
It's not. It's complex, often controversial. But it's an important conversation to have. Religious organizations often have valuable things to say about issues that affect us all. Finding ways to have those conversations constructively, that's crucial for a healthy democracy.
Well said. I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. We've gone deep on this whole idea of charitable status for religious organizations. We talked about what religion even means and about advancing religion and those tricky interprovincial operations and those sensitive issues of unconventional practices.
We've covered a lot of ground, and we've talked about financial transparency throughout it all.
Absolutely. It's this fascinating and often misunderstood place where faith and law meet.
It is. And I think this conversation will keep going.
Oh, for sure. We've just scratched the surface. There's so much more to unpack.
Exactly. So, to our listeners, especially those involved with religious organizations, we encourage you to keep learning, dive deeper into the specifics that matter to you,
Right.
and most importantly, talk to legal experts who really understand this stuff.
But even if you're not directly involved, I think this deep dive has been really eye-opening. It shows how religion and law interact in Canada, and it makes us think about the role of religion in our society and how to balance individual beliefs with the greater good.
It does, and it raises some really interesting questions about whether the current laws are really keeping up with how religious practice is changing in Canada.
Which leads us to our final thought-provoking question for you, our listeners. Does the way we handle religious charities now really reflect the amazing diversity and dynamism of faith in Canada today? Are those old definitions and categories still relevant in a world where how we express our faith is constantly changing?
We've talked about how those old laws, often based on a Christian perspective, might not fully grasp the nuances of other faiths. It makes you wonder if the law needs to broaden its view to include the full spectrum of beliefs and practices that make Canada so unique.
And we've seen how fast social norms are changing, how our understanding of religion is evolving, and how that pushes the boundaries of what it means to advance religion. What was clear a generation ago might be a gray area now.
So we challenge you, our listeners, talk about these things in your communities, consider different points of view, and think about how we can make sure the laws for religious charities in Canada stay relevant, fair, and truly reflect the rich tapestry of faiths that contribute to our nation.
It's an ongoing conversation, a process of understanding and adapting. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it was informative, got you thinking, and maybe even sparked some lively discussions.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Wow, that was a lot. I mean, we really went deep on the whole religion and charity thing in Canada.
We did.
But before we wrap up, maybe let's bring it back to our listener.
Okay.
What does all this legal stuff actually mean for people involved in their faith communities?
I think the biggest thing to remember is this. Getting charitable status in Canada, it's serious business, especially for religious groups. It's not enough to just have good intentions or want to help people.
Right.
You really need to understand the rules, those legal criteria we talked about.
Yeah.
You have to be able to show that what you do genuinely advances religion within those specific rules.
Yeah, it's like we've been saying, good intentions aren't enough. You got to connect the dots, show the CRA that link between your faith, your actions, and your religious mission.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember, we've only just scratched the surface here. Canadian charity law is complex. There's so much more to it than we could cover.
Right, it's a whole world. So, to our listeners, especially those involved with religious organizations, do your research, dig deeper into what applies to your situation, and most importantly, talk to the experts, the lawyers who specialize in this area.
I second that. Trying to figure this all out on your own, that's a recipe for trouble. Get expert help right from the start.
But even for those who aren't running a religious organization, I think this deep dive has been pretty eye-opening, wouldn't you say? It shows us this whole world where faith and law intersect in Canada. It makes you think about the role of religion in society and how we balance individual beliefs with what's good for everyone.
Absolutely. And it raises some really interesting questions about whether the current laws are really keeping up with how religious practice is changing in Canada.
Which brings us to our final thought-provoking question for you, our listeners. Does the way we handle religious charities now really reflect how diverse and dynamic faith is in Canada today? Are those old definitions and categories still relevant when how we express our faith is constantly evolving?
We talked about how those old laws, often coming from a Christian perspective, might not fully understand the nuances of other faiths. It makes you wonder, does the law need to widen its perspective to include all the different beliefs and practices that make Canada so special?
And we've seen how fast social norms are changing, how our understanding of religion is evolving, and how that pushes the boundaries of what it means to advance religion. Something that seemed clear a generation ago might be a gray area now.
So here's our challenge to you, our listeners. Have these conversations in your communities. Think about different points of view and consider how we can all work together to make sure the laws for religious charities in Canada stay relevant, fair, and truly reflect all the incredible faiths that make up our nation.
It's a conversation that needs to keep going, a process of understanding and adapting. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it informative, thought-provoking, and maybe even spark some lively conversations. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
And thanks for listening.